Two black teenagers were thrown out of a motorcycle dealership, and the next day, their billionaire father showed up in a helicopter. Call security. These kids can't even afford the tire on this bike. The shout echoed through Velocity Rider's mirrored showroom as the laughter spread like wildfire. The words cut through the air-conditioned air of the venue like sharp knives, hitting Marcus and Jamal Reed straight in the chest. Two black teenagers aged 16 and 17, frozen in time, their expressions quickly shifting from admiration to shock and then to a deep shame that burned inside. They didn't know as they were escorted out under contemptuous gazes that in less than 24 hours, that very showroom would shake, and it wouldn't be from the rumble of any motorcycle. It all started on a Saturday afternoon in West Ridge when the Reed brothers, wearing their worn-out denim jackets and ordinary sneakers, decided to visit the most exclusive motorcycle dealership in town. Both had saved up for months from their part-time jobs. Marcus delivering newspapers and Jamal mowing neighborhood lawns. Not to buy, but just to get a closer look at their dreams on two wheels. "Do you think they let us sit on them?" whispered Jamal, the youngest, as they approached the mirrored entrance to Velocity Riders. His eyes shone with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. "It doesn't hurt to ask," Marcus replied, taking a deep breath to gather his courage. "Remember what Dad always says, all you don't ask is no." What the brothers didn't know was that on the other side of those polished glass doors, their worth would be measured not by their character, but by their clothes and the color of their skin. Blake Thompson, the head salesman, spotted them the moment they entered. His rehearsed smile disappeared instantly, replaced by a look of disdain as he muttered something to his colleague Vanessa, who laughed discreetly behind the counter. The brothers walked chill among the gleaming motorcycles, finally arriving at the jewel in the crown. A customized Hayabusa in a mesmerizing metallic red with carbon fiber details. Jamal couldn't hold back a sigh. "It's the fastest in the world," he commented, eyes fixed on the machine as if he were in front of a work of art. "Can I help you?" The voice behind them sounded cold, calculated. Blake approached, his suit impeccable and his smile as empty as an ill-fitting mask. "We're just taking a look," Marcus explained politely. "This Hayabusa is incredible. How much does it cost?" An awkward silence filled the space between them. Lake looked the two brothers up and down. "This isn't a convenience store," he said, every word dripping with contempt. "This motorcycle costs more than you'll earn in 10 years. The brothers froze, their words heavy as lead. "We just wanted to know, Dash," began Jamal. But Blake interrupted him. "Look, we don't have time for curious people who clearly can't buy. We're expecting serious customers." His tone rose, drawing the attention of other employees and the few customers present. It was then that Blake crossed the line. "Call security. These kids can't even afford the tire on this bike." A burly security guard approached as muffled laughter echoed through the showroom. Marcus grabbed his brother's arm, which was shaking with anger and shame. "Come on, Jamal," he whispered. "It's not worth it." As they were escorted out, a single employee, Sophie Chin, watched them from the counter, discomfort evident on her face. Unlike the others, she wasn't laughing. She saw what no one else saw: the wounded dignity, the crushed dreams, the silent injustice she had just witnessed. Outside, Jamal punched a lamppost, tears of frustration burning his eyes. "They didn't even give us a chance. They didn't even ask about us." Marcus remained quiet, his silence heavier than any words. On the horizon, the sun was beginning to set over West Ridge, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. The same red of Hayabusa that, for a few minutes, had been the center of his dreams. What no one at Velocity Riders could have imagined was who those boys with no money really were. What they didn't know was that just a few kilometers away in a mansion on the highest hill in the city, Dr. Victor Reed, one of the country's biggest technology investors and a discreet philanthropist, was waiting for his sons for dinner, and what Blake Thompson could never have predicted was what would happen when the Reed brothers told their father about the treatment they had received. If this story is making you curious to find out what's to come, be sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next chapter in this journey of dignity and justice. Because as the brothers walked home with their heads down that afternoon, something inside them had changed. The silence between them was not one of defeat, but of growing determination. And on Mark's cell phone, an unread message from his father flashed discreetly. How was the outing? Excited to unveil our new helicopter tomorrow. Blake Thompson and Velocity Riders didn't know it, but they had just made the biggest mistake of their business. And the storm to come would not be heralded by thunder, but by the roar of the propellers. The tension hung over the Reed Mansion dining room like a dense, silent cloud. The soft glow of the crystal chandeliers illuminated Dr. Victor Reed's impassive face as his children recounted in restrained voices the incident at the car dealership. The silverware remained untouched on the imported china, the dinner forgotten in the gravity of the moment. "They laughed at us, Dad," Jamal concluded, his voice laced with restrained anger as if we were trash. Dr. Reed didn't raise his voice. He didn't break anything. He didn't promise immediate revenge. Hesitantly placed the cutlery next to the plate, adjusted his gold-framed glasses, and watched his children with an intensity that could cut diamonds. "Have you done something wrong?" The question came calmly, calculatedly. "No, sir," Marcus answered promptly. "We were polite. We didn't touch anything without permission." "Then why did you leave?" The question hung in the air like assword. The brothers exchanged glances because we felt humiliated, Marcus finally admitted. Dr. Reed stood up slowly, his almost 2-meter height commanding natural respect. For 20 years, he had built a technological empire from scratch, facing prejudice and exclusion every step of the way. Now, as one of the country's few black billionaires, Hestel faced questioning looks in exclusive circles. "Tomorrow," Heffenly said, his low voice carrying the weight of a promise, "you will learn the difference between leaving and strategically withdrawing." Upstairs, while the brothers tried to process what their father was planning, he made a series of calls in his private office, 3 specific calls. One to High's executive assistant, another to his personal pilot, and a third to someone whose number was registered simply as real estate contact. "I want all the information on Velocity Riders by tomorrow morning," High instructed the assistant. "Owners, financial history, market value, everything." Meanwhile, at the dealership, Blake Thompson was celebrating with colleagues at happy hour in a nearby bar. After his 5th drink, he laughed out loud, recounting the afternoon's incident. "You had to see their faces when I called security. Hayloft, spilling beer on the table, asked if 2 kids like that could dream of buying something from Velocity. They were more like thieves than customers." Across the bar, Sophie Chin listened insolence, the discomfort evident on her face. When she had finished her drink, she picked up her bag and left discreetly. In the parking lot, she started typing a resignation email, but stopped in the middle. Perhaps there was a better way to deal with the situation. The next morning at Reed Manor, breakfast took place in an atmosphere of silent anticipation. Marcus and Jamal watched their father, who was calmly reading the newspaper while eating toast with surgical precision. "Do we have to go to school today?" Jamal finally asked, breaking the silence. "Of course," Dr. Reed replied without lifting his eyes from the paper. "Education always comes first." He then folded the paper methodically and finally looked at his children. "But you'll be leaving early. I'll be waiting for you at the soccer field at 2 p.m., precisely at the field." "Why?" Marcus asked. "Because it's the only place in the school with space to land a helicopter." The brothers exchanged looks of surprise. The new Reed Industries helicopter, a customized Airbus AC-160 in metallic black with gold details, had not yet been unveiled to the public. Throughout the school day, the brothers could barely concentrate. When the clock struck 1:55 p.m., they were already in the field watching the clear sky. At 2 p.m., the distinctive sound of propellers cut through the air. The black AC-160 appeared on the horizon like a sleek predator, causing immediate commotion. Students and teachers rushed to the windows as the helicopter descended majestically in the center of the field, kicking up dust and provoking exclamations of admiration. Dr. Reed descended wearing an impeccable Italian suit, sunglasses reflecting the afternoon sun. With a discreet nod, he called his children. In a matter of minutes, they were flying over the city. "You received an important lesson yesterday," Dr. Reed finally said through his headset as they flew over the business district, "about how the world sometimes sees young black men, how it judges us before it even gets to know us." The helicopter made a gentle turn, revealing the Velocity Riders dealership below them. "Today you will learn a different lesson," he continued, as the pilot began to descend towards the dealership's empty parking lot, "about dignity, about consequences, and about how to respond accordingly without losing class." Inside the dealership, Blake Thompson was presenting a motorcycle to a couple when the deafening sound of the helicopter interrupted his sales pitch. Customers, employees, and even the manager rushed to the windows, stunned to see the impressive AC-160 landing directly in the parking lot. "Who the hell is doing this?" the manager exclaimed, running outside. "That's private property." Blake followed him, his irritation evident until the moment the helicopter doors opened. His face instantly palled as he recognized the two teenagers descending after the imposing man in the suit. "It can't be," he muttered, immediately recognizing Dr. Victor Reed from the business and technology magazines. Sophie Chin, who had just arrived for her shift, stopped next to Blake, a small smile forming on her lips. "I think those kids you kicked out yesterday have just come back," she whispered. "And it looks like they've brought their father." Blake swallowed, his whole body frozen as the man who controlled billions in technological assets walked towards him with determined steps. The same man whose children he had humiliated and expelled as intruders. What Blake didn't know was that Velocity Riders was about to change hands and that Dr. Reed wasn't just there for a show of power, but for a complete restructuring that would begin with a simple question. "Do you remember my children? Because they certainly remember you." Time seemed to have frozen in the Velocity Warriors parking lot. The roar of the helicopter's propellers gradually diminished, but the silence of that settled in was even more deafening. Dr. Victor Reed advanced with firm, measured steps towards the entrance to the dealership, his two sons following close behind. His presence was magnetizing, the kind of power that didn't need to be shouted to be heard. Blake Thompson stood paralyzed in the doorway, his face alternating between deathly power and a flush of growing shame. The store manager, Alan Parker, rushed to intercept the unexpected visitor, his expression oscillating between irritation at the interruption and curiosity as to who the man in a helicopter was. "Sir, you're not allowed to land here. This is private property." The words died in his throat when he recognized the face that had appeared on the cover of Forbes the previous month. "Dr. Reed, what can we do for you?" Victor Reed ignored the manager completely, his eyes fixed on Blake, who now seemed to get smaller by the second. Beside him, Marcus and Jamal watched with a mixture of apprehension and restrained satisfaction. "You," Dr. Reed pointed directly at Blake, his voice calm but penetrating. "Do you remember my children? Because they certainly remember you." The entire showroom had stopped. Customers, employees, everyone was watching the scene unfold. "DDR Reed," Blake stammered, trying to regain his composure. "There was a misunderstanding yesterday. I didn't know." "Dash exactly," Reed cut him off with surgical precision. "You didn't know, and yet you felt entitled to judge, humiliate, and expel two young people based solely on their appearance and the color of their skin." The dealership was now completely silent. Few employees exchanged nervous glances while Sophie Chin watched everything closely, an expression of relief crossing her face. Mr. Reed, the manager, intervened again, sweating profusely. "Assure you that Velocity Riders does not endorse any form of discrimination. If there has been an incident, we can resolve it discreetly in my office." Victor Reed turned to him, his expression inscrutable. "Discreetly? How discreet was it when your employees laughed at my children yesterday? How discreet was it when they were escorted out like criminals? He then turned to Blake again. My children came here with a dream. They saved up from their jobs to one day perhaps buy their own bikes. They didn't ask for special treatment. They didn't mention my name. They just wanted to be treated with a minimum of dignity. Blake tried to speak again, but Reed held up his hand, silencing him instantly. Now you're going to listen without interrupting, he ordered, because I have something important to teach you. Something you've apparently never learned. Dr. Reed walked slowly through the showroom, running his fingers over the seat of a gleaming Ducati. A person's worth is never measured by what they wear or the color of their skin. It's measured by their character. He paused, looking directly at Blake, and yesterday you demonstrated yours. The store manager tried one last desperate intervention. Dr. Reed, Blake is our best salesman. I'm sure this was just an isolated error of judgment. That's when Sophie Chin stepped forward, her voice trembling slightly but resolute. It wasn't isolated, Mr. Parker. He does it regularly. Young blacks and Latinos are constantly treated differently here. A murmur ran through the store. The manager glared at Sophie, who stood her ground. You're fired, he hissed. No, she's not, Reed's voice cut through the air like a blade. In fact, no one here is in a position to fire anyone at the moment. He gestured at his assistant, who had arrived discreetly while everyone was focused on the confrontation. Walked over to the group holding a folder of documents. As oath last night, Reed continued, Reed Holdings is the new majority owner of Velocity Riders Enterprises. He smiled for the first time, a small but devastating smile, which means that technically I'm the boss of all of you now. The revelation dropped like a bombshell. The manager staggered backwards, leaning on the nearest counter. Impossible, he muttered. We're a franchise of Velocity International which was looking for investors, Reed added. It was a quick negotiation, but very satisfactory for both parties. My team worked all night to finalize the details. Blake looked like he was about to faint. His knees visibly weakened as the reality of the situation hit him like a train. Throughout the showroom, stunned faces were processing what they had just heard. So Reed addressed Blake directly. You're fired, not just from this store, but from all 17 Velocity dealerships in the country. I'm implementing a zero-tolerance policy for discrimination at all of them starting today. The no ex-salesman opened his mouth, but no sound came out. The manager tried one last plea. Dr. Reed, please reconsider. I can assure you that we will take internal measures to dash. You're fired too, Reed interrupted him without hesitation. A fish rots from the head down. If this happened under your supervision, you're just as responsible. He then turned to Sophie, who was watching everything with a mixture of shock and admiration. Miss Chun, isn't it? My children told me about you, about how you treated them with respect when no one else did. Reed held out his hand. Would you like to take over as interim manager while we restructure the team? Sophie's eyes widened in disbelief. She looked at Marcus and Jamal, who were smiling discreetly, and then back at Reed. I would be honored, sir, she replied, shaking his hand firmly. Blake, finally finding his voice, stepped forward. You can't do that. I'll sue, Reed turned to him one last time, his gaze now icy. Please try. My lawyers would love to discuss this in court where security cameras and witnesses could make your conduct public. He then gestured to his children who approached. Now, my children came yesterday to see a Hayabusa. He looked around the showroom. Which one is the best you've got? What happened next left everyone present in a state of complete shock. No one could have imagined that the simple visit of two curious teenagers would result in a complete power shift. While Blake and the manager emptied their desks and tables and left through the back door, the Reed brothers walked around the showroom as if they owned the place, which technically they now did. But Dr. Reed wasn't finished. What he was about to announce would completely transform not only Velocity Riders, but the entire luxury dealership market in the region. And as Sophie Chin began her first day as manager, something even more surprising was about to happen. When the dealership's doors opened the next morning, the next sunrise found Velocity Riders transformed. A new crystal-clear or acrylic sign gleamed above the entrance. Red Velocity Motors, where respect comes first. It wasn't just an name change, it was a declaration of principles. Sophie Chin arrived early, her hands shaking slightly as she unlocked the doors as a first-time manager. In her bag, the new conduct manual written by Dr. Reed in the wee hours of the morning. On the first page, judge people by their character, not their appearance. Outside, a crowd was forming. The news had spread like wildfire. Billionaire buys car dealership after black children are discriminated against. A local news network had sent a broadcast van that was now parked across the street. The Reed brothers arrived driving an ordinary pickup truck, wearing the same denim jackets as on the day of their humiliation, but their eyes carried a new gleam. Not of victory, but of purpose. At the entrance, new employees gathered nervously. 3 young black men, 2 Latinos, and a woman wearing a hijab. All qualified, all previously rejected by Blake or the old manager. The sound of propellers announced Dr. Reed's arrival. But when the helicopter landed, many were confused to see not just one, but 2 men descend from it. "Is that Blake Thompson?" whispered an attendant, pointing to the former salesman who was walking gingerly beside Dr. Reed without his expensive suit, wearing a simple polo shirt and jeans. "Good morning, everyone," Dr. Reed announced, his voice resonating through the showroom. "Today is not just the opening of a new store. It's the start of a new philosophy." The main doors opened. The crowd began to enter in an orderly fashion, many filming with their cell phones. "Yesterday, you witnessed the result of a prejudgment based on appearances," Reed continued. "Today, you'll see something different." Blake, the former salesman, stepped forward, his face a mask of restrained shame. "I made a terrible mistake," he began, his voice trembling. "I judged these young people on their appearance, on the color of their skin. I publicly humiliated them." Dr. Reed resumed speaking. "Blake won't be selling here again, but he will be the new Director of Awareness and Equity at Reed Holdings, visiting all our companies to share his experience." A murmur of surprise went through the crowd. Real change doesn't come from punishing others, but from transforming them. "I don't want Blake to lose his job. I want him to find his humanity," Reed took an envelope from his pocket. "I'm announcing the Reed Apprentice Program, which will provide 10 young people from underprivileged communities with complete training in motorcycle mechanics. The first 2 beneficiaries will be chosen by my sons." Marcus and Jamal smiled. They already knew who they would invite. 2 friends from school passionate about motorcycles, but without the resources for technical courses. In this Hayabusa Dr. Reed touched their bike his sons had admired will be auctioned off, and all the proceeds will go toward scholarships. For young black men interested in mechanical engineering, because true power lies not in owning something expensive, but in transforming lives outside former manager. Parker watched a bitter expression frozen on his face. Unlike Blake, he had turned down Reed's offer to redeem himself. In his hands was a folder of resumes rejected over the years, all from perfectly qualified candidates, but with foreign names or photos revealing their ethnicity. His arrogance had cost him not only his job, but his dignity. That afternoon, the Reed Velocity Motor story became a national trending topic. Not for the helicopter, not for the billionaire who had bought an entire dealership, but for the powerful lesson: a person's true worth never lies in what they wear or the color of their skin, but in the content of their character. Sophie, now firmly installed as manager, looked out of the window at the end of the day. The transformation was visible, not just in the new uniforms, the new policies, but in the looks, the smiles, the energy that now pulsed through that once exclusive and now welcoming space. That day, many people learned that prejudice isn't just morally wrong, it's also bad business. And that sometimes the real wealth is not in what you own, but in the respect you offer each person who crosses your path. If this story has touched your heart, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to the channel for more stories that inspire and transform. Tell us in the comments, have you ever experienced or witnessed a situation of prejudice that later resulted in a powerful lesson? What's the biggest twist of justice you've seen in real?